The man said, "Oh, I spoke to the decanter's father." So I am a decanter. That's it. So anyway, I'm watching my time, Rabbi.
The Cantor Heit. We need to get started. So,
I know.
Person definitely no stranger to Mitzvah congregation. Cantor Heit has been here in the past as a scholar in residence in person back in the days when such a thing could happen. And just recently as a scholar in residence for Lunch and Learns, for a wonderful series of learning about the history of Jewish music. And she has graciously agreed to come back and be part of our Shavuot Day of Learning. And I'll just, without any further ado, Cantor Heit, take it away. We're happy to have you back.
Well, thank you. First of all, Rabbi, thank you so much for asking me back. And to all of you who I have met before, and I recognize a lot of names, it's wonderful to be with you again. And I'd like to start, as we did in our sessions, with our blessing, and then we'll begin to learn and discuss. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has commanded us with your commandments to immerse ourselves in the words of Torah. So the title of today's session is The Music and Theology of Liberation and a Liberating God. And this has been something that my husband and I have spoken about for a very long time, in terms of whenever we look at a lot of the worship service, it says, God says to us, "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt to be your God." And that is how God continually self-identifies the divine presence. And it dawned on me that there is really a timeline for all of this, and it is entirely appropriate to use the metaphor of the Omer that we are almost at the end of as the same type of a journey, the journey of liberation. And the reason that part of the title says counting up to freedom is because when we count the Omer, we don't say, this is the 10th day, this is the 9th day, that we don't count down, we do count up. It is as if metaphorically, we are still replicating that journey from the base of Mount Sinai up. We are counting up, we are adding to our freedom. And that really got me to thinking not only about just the term a liberating God, but how much that permeates almost all of our liturgy, all of our theology, and when that really began to occur. So we're going to go very, very far back for a very, very short period of time. And that is back to creation, because we're all taught that God created the world. Now, I had a rabbi once who said, really, did God create the world, or did God put the world in order? It's another way of looking at it. I know you have to kind of bend a little bit with what we've all been taught. And it says the Spirit of God breathed across the face of the earth and brought forth these things. Yes. And it's beautiful, and we can take it that way. God created the world. And after God created the world, God goes through the days, and finally we get to human beings. And then God begins to create the human experience. Unfortunately, first experience was fratricide, but we'll unpack that later. God creates the human experience. And then God creates a particular human being, and God speaks to that one human being, and that one human being begins to go on a journey. There's still nothing to liberate. There is no people Israel. There is a God speaking to one human being. Then God gives that one human being a travel log. In all seriousness, Go back to what happens when God says to Abraham, go. God doesn't say, I will create a people by you. God says, I will allow you, I will show you this land. I will allow you to see it. And then in the Torah, it says, and this person, he goes here and he goes here. He takes this journey. It's kind of like he's a tour guide. Now, God then has relationships with one person at a time. Anybody else that the divine chooses possibly to communicate with is communicated with via an angel. If you're thinking of Sarah, Sarah gets a visit by an angel. God reveals the divine self to Abraham. Lech lecha me'artzecha mimoladecha. Get yourself up, get yourself going, get out, go. Still, it's one person. And God continually speaks to one person and one person only until a particular event occurs. And it's actually after the Exodus when God communicates to us on Mount Sinai. So God creates the world. God liberates us. And there are rabbis who say that did God really create the world, or did God make order out of chaos? Because one of the things, when you start to notice these things, especially in the liturgy, little antennae go up. There's one prayer that says, blessed are you, Adonai, God, our God, who renews the acts of creation. Or blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who renews creation. And we're told all the time that God creates a new day. Every day is a new day. And those are acts of creation. God liberated us. And we'll get to the question of why we were liberated. We have to get to the point of why did God liberate us and how? And I thought about that a lot too. And I thought about the fact that somebody doesn't just walk into a town and say, I'm going to liberate you. It doesn't happen that way. But if somebody starts complaining about something, something's going to happen. Hopefully somebody will listen. And it's not until, as the Torah says, God heard the moaning of the Israelites, that God says, oh, I have to do something. And God takes action. And through Moses, God liberates the children of Israel. And we know this from our stories. We know this from the ethos of Pesach. That's what Pesach is all about. It's reminding us of a liberating God, a God that says to Abraham, get up and go. And if any of us remember the stories, I do when I was a kid, of Abraham's father having the idol shop. And Abraham decides to sort of see if the idols are going to work, and they don't. And he breaks all the idols, and daddy gets mad. And that's how we discovered that there's one God, right? And then God says to Abraham, get up and go. Turn your back on that and go to the land that I will allow you to see. And I like that translation and I like that interpretation, because if you are liberated in thought, there's so much more you can see. There's so much more that you can experience and see when you're liberated in your thought, when your eyes are opened, when God allows you to see it. There's many different ways to feel and to be liberated. A redeeming God, a liberating God, by the way, is not a punishing God. A liberating God really is asking us in our tradition to be good people. and to look at the world and to look at what needs to be done. We are liberated. God is allowing us to see that. The idea of a liberating God also, you have to have a from and a to. So we were liberated from slavery to freedom. Where else, especially in the common era, the modern era, have we been liberated to, a place to go to? And you can either turn off your mutes or put it in the chat if you want to. This would be if I was teaching live, I would ask you all, say something. You don't have to keep your mutes on. Don't worry about it.
The Holocaust.
Exactly. Liberated from the Holocaust. Exactly. The people who survived and the people whose memories survived. How about from exile to homeland?
Mm-hmm.
Irrespective of what's going on today, this is not political in the least, but from exile to homeland. And our people have been returned from exile many times to our homeland. And not in self-selected diasporas, in ones where we were physically taken. So a liberating God isn't just from slavery to freedom. There are other ways to liberate. And the liberator, not that the liberator must be recognizable, but the people must recognize that this entity is a liberator. So you get something such as, if I forget thee, O Jerusalem, may my right hand lose its cunning. Jerusalem can also be used as a metaphor for God, for the place for God. Where was the temple?
Jerusalem.
I was just going to say it wasn't in Schenectady. Okay, I mean, it wasn't in Sheboygan. It was in Jerusalem. And so if that's your center, don't forget where the Holy of Holies is. Don't forget where that center is. Now, I have that leads me to something, and I brought these out. Have any of you been to Theresienstadt in Europe?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, then some of you have you seen the Hidden Chapel?
I don't know. I think so. I just don't remember.
Okay, it's like the size of my living room. It's even smaller, I think. But anyway, if you've seen it, you'll know, and if these should show up, these photographs. I'm going to put it up so you can see it. It should come through. Is it coming through well enough? Okay. That is a photograph of a wall in the Hidden Chapel. And the Hidden Chapel, all around the walls, the damage is not from the Nazis or at all. It's not from the Russians. It's not from bombs, nothing. It is from a flood that occurred, I think, about 10 years before we had gotten there, and they didn't have the money to repair it. So they had just left it like that. So don't think it was destroyed in any way other than a natural disaster. So it has this beautiful, beautiful calligraphy. This is actually a remnant, if any of you can read it, of Da Lifnei Miata Omed, what's left of it. Know before whom you stand, a reminder that you're standing before the Redeemer. And also the redeeming God, the liberating God. There's also one that says, if I forget thee, I told you, if I forget thee, O Jerusalem. There's some beautiful, beautiful ones. There's one here, and this one was the best of all of the, just so you can see what it looked like. There, that's better. And that was all done by hand. And they were trying to think of a way to be able to restore it to what it looked like when the people could use it. But all of that is a reminder that our God is a liberating God, and our God will liberate us no matter what. And if not for us, for our children. It's the same reason that there's a song in Yiddish that was sung during the Holocaust called the Partisan Song. Sag nicht einmal, als du gehst in letzten Weg. It's in Yiddish, and it's about never say you walk the final road. And there's always a tomorrow. There's always something to hope for. There is always something to be grateful for. And to that end, when you look at our liturgy, yes, we're told God says, I liberated you. I did this for you. And he says it to an entire group. By the way, the first time we hear it in a group is when we get the Torah. And then later in Nitzavim, it says, you stand here this day, all of you, before the Lord your God. And it goes down this litany, right? It's like everybody in the community, you stand here this day, all of you, before the Lord your God. So now we're all, it's not just one person. When we went down into Egypt, we went into Egypt twice. There were famines all over the place. And Abraham goes down and comes back, and then we got to go back down again. And we keep having these travel logs, but it's one person at a time that gets these conversations, has these conversations. And then when the people are ready, we get the Torah. We get it as a community. Now, if you think about it, Pesach, and I say this a lot, is the best metaphor for slavery. For those of us who keep Pesach for the 7 or 8 days completely, hello, you know what freedom is the day, the night you can have Chinese food or pizza or a hamburger or a lasagna or a bagel, anything, right? You know what freedom is. But it's kind of like, well, there still might be matzah in the cabinet. What do I do? It's kind of like when all of a sudden the CDC said, oh, you can go without masks now. Really? What do we do? I mean, I still put mine on, and my husband looks at me going, you're in a small building, you don't need it. But honey, I'm used to it. You need this time to know what freedom is. You've been given this gift, you need to learn how to use it. Kind of like getting a new computer, right? New cell phone, you have to learn how to use it. The same thing happened with the African American community when they got the notice of the Emancipation Proclamation. They were like, what do we do now? What do we do? And so the idea that God waits to talk to the community until there was more of a community feeling rather than I'm going to go to each individual person makes a lot of sense. And the people were ready to recognize that this truly was a liberating and is a liberating God. Wait, this was my first Passover this year, and I kept kosher for Passover, and that bagels and lox. I congratulate you for your first Pesach. I really do. Some of Pesach is wonderful, and some of it is a challenge. Anyway, I won't go there. My mother, Olive Shalom, made fruit compote every year when I was a kid. I didn't make it the first year I lived alone, and boy, did I know why she made it every year. That's all I'm going to say. So, at the liberating God and our theology and our liturgy, aside from Micha Mocha, which you all know, which comes from the first song that we sang when we crossed the Sea of Reeds. Mm-hmm. Who is like you, the God who is worshipped? Who is like you? That's what do you say after somebody liberates you?
Yeah, it's a miracle.
You say thank you, right? You kind of don't say, here's my bill. You got me wet. You took me through water. Here's your bill. No, you say thank you for freeing me. We also have in our tradition, I believe, blessings that prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are among the most grateful group of people in the world. You think about it, we have a blessing for everything. I have my father's little prayer book from when I was a little girl, and I have the list of blessings. And it's blessing when you see the first spring leaf, blessing when you see when you hear thunder, when you see lightning, when it rains, when it snows, when you go to the bathroom, when you open your eyes, when you close them at night. Everything that you do has a blessing. That to me is the epitome of gratitude. And gratitude, interestingly enough, again, for a God who has liberated us. Because when we say, blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has commanded us by our commandments to do this, we're being grateful that we have the freedom to do these things. And I just, to me, am Rebecca Sunshine about all of this, because it leads me to the theology of a loving, caring Avinu Malkeinu, our parent, our sovereign, a true parent. And I know we all know the word Av as father, but when we use it in a plural form, we can also say parent. So I choose to translate it that way. Anyway, in our morning blessings, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who frees the captive. Again, a liberating God. And asked by a student if there's a blessing for chocolate. Oh, for Carol Cohen, I can't see the whole question. Oh, darn. Maybe I can. And he remembered the congregation. Oh, I love it. I love it.
I'll send you a copy if you'd like.
Listen, with the first time I went skiing here in Colorado, and I got up to the top of a mountain, I made up my own blessing. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, whose majesty fills the earth, because it was a view that took my breath away. And that's what we do. We write our blessings. So there's another blessing towards the end of these are all in the morning blessings, the daily morning blessings. And this one actually is interesting. It's gender specific. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani bat chorin. Now I use bat. If you're a man, you say ben chorin. Blessed are you, Adonai, my God, sovereign of the universe, who has made me free. Now, being free and being a captive, you also don't have to be enslaved. It doesn't have to be, God forbid, in a camp somewhere. There are a lot of us who are enslaved, unfortunately now, with health issues, emotional issues. Some are enslaved by developmental issues. And I'm not saying that prayer alone, there's different views of prayer. And I'm not saying that just praying is going to make these all go away. But I am saying that when we have the freedom to pray, prayer can comfort us. Prayer can give us hope. And that is a form of liberation. And that is the God that, for me, permeates our theology. Everything that we do is about thinking and feeling and doing for us, for ourselves, and for the people that we care about, the people that we love, and our world. We are free to have the vision to make the world a better place. And that's a feeling of liberation. And in our music, we see it. Our music is about doing. Our music is about who God is. In our worship services, and I ask you not a question, but something to think about the next time you're in services. If you look carefully at the worship service, it's structured as God has three parts. God is creator, God is revealer, and then God becomes the redeemer. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Blessed are you, Adonai, the redeemer of Israel. And in that redemption, if you look at the way the service works, the service also works from past to present to future. The first part of the worship service up to the Michamocha, up to the Michamocha, is sort of past. You created this, you did this, you gave us the Torah, right? You get the Michamocha, and then what comes after the Michamocha? Anybody in worship remember that? Baruch atah the Avot v'Imahot, which is present. And then the future stuff is the Aleinu. May the time not be distant, O God, when your name shall be worshipped in all the earth. So you get past, present, and future. We also have God. You notice there's threes in here. It's kind of weird. We have God as creator, revealer, and redeemer. And after we are redeemed, then we hear God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And God, the reason, by the way, it says God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob is because God revealed the divine presence to each one of them in different ways. Just so if you're ever wondering that, it's a little piece of trivia there, but I'm sure Rabbi Lewis has told you. So probably being a little redundant there. Anyway.
It doesn't mean they remember.
From you, Rabbi, they'll remember anything. You know that. You're a rabbi. Come on. But through that, we have the freedom to say these prayers. We have the freedom to say God has strength. God is with us. God is holy, and our day is holy. That's part of the Amidah. My rabbi teaching my intro to Judaism said that God gives us the freedom of choice. Absolutely. I can't see you who wrote that, but I'm going to see if I can get to it again. Oh, come on up. This is a choice. And as someone who's choosing, yes. Thank you, whoever you are. Oh, Andy Pereira. Is that right? Did I say that right?
That's right. My camera doesn't work on my computer. I was on Zoom on my phone, but it died.
No, that's okay. Andy, did I pronounce that right?
Yes, that's right.
I love what you said. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I will thank you on behalf of the Jewish people for saying something so lovely. And thank you for saying what you did to our session today. Our sense of a liberating God has given us the power within ourselves and the power within our community to think critically, to think abstractly, and to expand how we look at things and to be open to new ways of thinking. And that is incredibly liberating. Historically, within other faith communities, the thought process has been at sometimes drastically restricted. The reason that in medieval churches in Europe, the windows are scenes of biblical settings are because the majority of the population could not read. And so they only knew the Bible that people wanted them to know. And the only way that they would know it was by these depictions. So if you look at the art of the medieval churches, you will see very specific scenes, and certain scenes are completely left out. Scenes that we love and study and just resonate to are completely left out. And the scenes that particular religious communities wanted to use as stepping stones to a new theology were the ones that were presented. Jewish tradition presents all of the Torah, some of it with quite a few warts, but it presents all of it. And then it goes back and it unpacks it. It says, this is what this may mean. Oh, but here's another one, and here's another one, and here's another one. And when we learn that there are so many different ways to interpret our tradition and our Torah, that is incredibly liberating. And that's a tradition I truly believe that has been handed down by a God who says to Abraham, behold, this is the land that I will allow you to see, that you will be able to see laid out in front of you. And when my son became a bar mitzvah, the metaphor that I used was that Judaism was a table, and he was sitting down there, and that the fruits of Judaism were laid out before him. And I do believe that that's part of what God does with Abraham, is here it is. I'm letting you see this. And it will, when your eyes are open, you can see these things. There's another way to feel liberated, and it's through words. And I don't know if you've ever heard this before. You probably have, but it's worth repeating. There is a little piece of graffiti that was found on a wall written by a young person during the Holocaust. We don't know who the young person was. We don't know if this person survived, but it says in part, I believe in the sun, even when the sun is not shining. I believe in God, even when God is not present. So we know, I mean, behind me, obviously it's big windows to outside, but it's a very cloudy day today, and you really can't, it's like drab and gray, unusual for Colorado, but it's dull and icky. But I know that the sun is still shining. And I have faith that the sun is still shining, even when it gets really dark and it's really cloudy and the sky turns black and it gets really ugly. That's faith. And that faith, I do believe, is liberating. And we're not told exactly how to believe, but we're told we can believe. And the next question is, what were we liberated for? Think about that for a second. And then anybody who wants to put it in the chat is more than welcome, because I kind of have an answer. And it's not a trick question, I promise. I promise, I promise, I promise. But what were we liberated for? I'll give you a hint. It kind of involves the burning bush. Looks like somebody's either trying to write something or do something on the screen, so I can't tell. But it kind of involves the burning bush. Okay, so I'll tell you. The tradition says that there are several things that were created the moment of creation, and one of them was the burning bush. So now I ask you another question before I give you the other answer. What is the miracle of the burning bush? What are we told is the miracle of the burning bush?
Burned.
It burned, right? At what? Hasne enenu uchal. The bush was not eaten, or the bush was not consumed. The rabbis tell us that it was a miracle, okay? I'm going to say it's a miracle. I don't want to disappoint anybody and get anybody mad at me. The miracle also was the fact that the bush had been burning from the moment of creation. It was one of those things that God created at the moment, and nobody noticed. And that the miracle was that Moses noticed and stopped long enough to hear God's message. and to respond. So if we think about that, we also think we're being given permission, we are liberated to do and notice what needs to be done. Even if it's little things, we're still liberated to do them. We're still liberated to open our eyes and see into the dark corners of the world. I kind of believe that we're kind of like, the guy with the lamp I think he's looking for an honest man or something.
Yeah.
But to me, it's Diogenes. To me, it's that the term Orla Goyim, doesn't mean Goyim, okay? Goyim is something different. But to me, the term Orla Goyim, a light to the nations, means that we are liberated to shine that light into the dark corners and to notice the things that need to be fixed in the world.
Mm-hmm. And we have an obligation to do them.
Yes, not only do we have an obligation to do them, this is the one thing, interestingly enough, that we're not liberated from yet. It says, Lo alecha ligmor, velo ata ben chorin lihibateo mimena. We are not allowed to turn away from it.
But we are not our obligation to finish it.
But we may never finish it. And just because we may never finish it doesn't mean we can't start it. Mm-hmm. So that does give us the freedom to know that even though we can't finish it, it's a gift, it's an obligation for us to start it. Somebody else will go to finish it. Think the children's story about Choni and the tree.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking.
Why are you planting the tree, old man? Why are you planting it? You're not going to see it. Oh, but you'll see it and your children will see it.
Standing on the shoulders.
Yep.
That's
exactly. Exactly. And we were given, that is such a liberating feeling. And when you have that, you have the feeling of community, because other people are doing the same thing. We've been doing this Jewish thing. It's true. We've been doing it for so long that our bodies know how to do it. And I'm not talking about just reciting the prayers or knowing the Hebrew. Rabbi, I know that's important. I didn't mean it that way. There's all different ways to feel liberated in our Judaism and understand it through a liberating God. And to be able to do things, to be able to do these things in community, even during Zoom, is liberating. To know that you have other people, no matter if it's here or around the world, it is liberating. I love the phrase, more than Israel has kept the Shabbat, has the Shabbat kept Israel. Everybody around the world, and we're liberated to do it. We can see it. And it becomes so apparent between Pesach. That's why this is the time of year when it just becomes so paramount, because our tradition models it, our foods model it, our festivals model the whole experience from beginning to culmination, if you want to say from kindergarten to graduation, from the beginning of Pesach to Shavuot. This entire experience is laid out in front of us, because the beginning starts with the words to one person, and that one person is Moses. And then Moses begins to act on that communication. He gets the liberation piece first, and then he comes back to act as, I would say, maybe God's representative. I guess that's the best way to put it. God is acting through him. He's acting on God's instructions. And he begins the process of liberation. First, he's got to get a group of Hebrews to kind of get along with each other, which is a challenge among its just of itself. He gets them, he takes them on this journey all by himself. And when the time is right and we have become a community, the divine presence reveals itself. And that is going to happen tonight. It's that one voice singing in the darkness. Thank you. God, I could have named that tune. Darn. She's laughing. Cal's laughing. It's cute. Anyway, it's true. And that one voice, that still small voice inside of each one of us, which our tradition says we have, is that liberating God. That God that says, get up and go. And sometimes it feels very difficult to feel liberated, I think. I go back to the idea of the Emancipation Proclamation. And there's a new little graphic, and it was created, I think, for a podcast. And this man comes into an African-American, obviously it looks like it's a Texan enslaved house, not the house, but the residence. And he says, we're free, we're free, we're free. And everybody in the house go, yay! What do we do now? And so now we're no longer standing. Remember too, and this is another metaphor, standing at the shores of the sea. We're free, we're free, we're free. Oh, what do we do? And then you just keep going. You just keep going and you just keep going. And it's closer and it gets closer and it gets closer. And you get you get the Torah. And then you have to learn what to do with it. You still have to learn. Do you think the people on what was then called the Pioneer West could really understand what the Declaration of Independence was when they first got it? No. Some of them couldn't even read. So there has to be an experience. And once you get to that experience as a community, when you become a community, then it's Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem lihiyot leElohim ladonai. I am your God who led you out of Egypt to be your God. And when you go back into the prayer book, that is the majority of the time God refers to the divine person. I am your God type of a statement. It goes along with who led you out of Egypt to be your God. Remember, it's like your mother saying, I just realized this. How many of us have said this to our kids? I gave birth to you. It's almost the same thing. It's almost the same thing. God becomes in the Kianu Amecha, the prayer that we say on Yom Kippur, which I love. Kianu Amecha, it's this beautiful, almost a lullaby piece of music that remind us almost, your daddy and mommy standing by. It's that kind of a sort of an ethos. We are your people, you are our sovereign. I mean, it's that sense that God is with us. God is there with us, especially tonight on Shavuot. What an appropriate time to be talking about this. You've all gotten there. You've gotten there. And now this is it. This is it. It's as if saying, okay, you understand, you understand, you're ready. How many of us, this is going to date me. At last class, I said something about I'm 48 stars and 8 planets old. I said that to somebody. now I'm the TV show Kung Fu and David Carradine old. How many of you remember the Kung Fu TV show? Does anybody else but me remember that? No? Oh, thank you. Somebody does. Somebody does. Okay. David Carradine played this, he was actually white and Asian. He was multiracial. And he was a Kung Fu cowboy, sort of. And he lived in the Old West, and he saved people with his martial arts talents. And in the beginning of every episode, there was his older sensei putting a pebble out and saying, "When you can snatch the pebble from my hand, grasshopper." And then, it becomes the whole meme of the whole TV series. Well, it's as if God is saying to us at this time, it's not a pebble, but it's now time for you. I'm not even going to try to go like this to you. It's now time for you to have this. Now, granted, in the TV series, the first time you ever see him do it, he pulls the pebble away. So what happens the first time the 10 commandments, if you will, come down from Mount Sinai? Oh, you all know the story, don't you? Shock, right? The pebble gets taken away. Moses breaks the commandments. He gets mad and he has to go back up again, right? And he comes back down. So even David Carradine didn't get him on the first try. So all of these things, right? But when you're ready, and I actually had a voice student who Rabbi Lewis knows, and he had just, oh my gosh, he was just an amazingly wonderful friend and voice student. And he decided it was time for him to move on from here. And I had a lunch for him. And when I used to joke with him, and I said, "You're going to get, you've earned the pebble." No. So when he left, I gave him in a little box on a little cushion, a pebble. I said, here's your stone. You don't need to try to grab it anymore. And some of us who know that TV show know that metaphor. I think God is in a way doing the same thing. God is giving us the gift. God is saying, it's yours now. And now it's your turn to do something with it. And that's the liberating factor, is that it's yours. It's kind of like giving your child to the world. Oy. When they send them off, not right at college, but it's like, okay, now it's your turn.
Cantor,
so
keep an
yes,
eye on the time, and we want to.
I am. That's what I was about to say, was that I don't know how to do it on my end, but if everyone wants to turn on their microphones, if people want to chat, I don't know how.
Everyone's free. They can just push the space bar. They can unmute themselves. And,
okay. It's down there where it says.
Or just chat. And, this has been so enlightening and just so, I love thinking about it from a different perspective all the time. And so it really gave me a lot to think about.
Well, that's part of this. And let me explain where some of this came from. Some of you know that I mentioned it in the Lunch and Learn sessions. I had seen this documentary about the Black church, and my husband and I had been for a very long time doing readings on the idea of God letting us out of Egypt to be our God. And when I looked at how the African American church also looks at a liberating God, and how a liberating God for that group of people has really given them hope and strength in some incredibly dark times, I suddenly realized, when I look back, especially at the texts from the Shoah, and also from the texts and some of the practices that are still alive during the Inquisition period, I realized how powerful the idea of a liberating God is for us and can be for us. And especially in our darkest times. I think it's something vitally important to think about. So and Rabbi Lewis has gotten to know me well enough to know that when I'm passionate about somebody and something, I devote time to study so I can learn more about it and become more knowledgeable about it. So
I also like the link between creation and liberation. That means we were made to be free. We were designed
yes,
Oh, that's what the morning
yes,
thing.
yes,
That's the morning.
But also we were made to be the one people to take God's message to the world and get it accepted in the world.
yes,
We're still working on
And we're
yes.
still working on that.
it.
Yes,
was
but
specifically your job.
remember, lo alecha hamlecha lemor.
Yeah.
But also remember too that God has given us all as people certain gifts, and even the ancient Israelites, we've learned this through archaeological finds, have learned how to use those gifts. And there was a remarkable archaeological find of a series of grocery lists and errand lists that are over, I think, 2,000 years old. And they're all in Hebrew, but they're all in different handwritings, and they're all from the same period. And they indicate, archaeologists indicate, that this shows that our people were far more literate than most of the ancient world. And I truly believe that that literacy also helped us retain our traditions, because it's a heck of a lot easier to carry your information on a piece of papyrus than a piece of stone. There you go.
There's one
And
other,
if you're interested, that's in Archaeology magazine, if anybody's interested, that whole piece about the different handwritings.
there is one other thing that's interesting to me that I was explaining. They say that Jews are God's chosen people, but in reality, the Jewish people chose God. We chose to accept the Torah and follow its teachings.
I also think that because God says we are all the world, we are all treasured people. And I do believe we are chosen. We are chosen for a specific task within our world. I think that all religions have validity, as long as they're not trying to kill each other, but all religions have validity, and they were chosen for specific tasks. We may not agree with some of the tasks, but I think we have very specific tasks. And I think one of the, if not the biggest, is tikkun olam, repairing the world. And I think that's part of our liberation theology, is God has given us the eyes to see that, and the koyach, if you will use my Yiddish, to do it, and to have the courage to start the task and then be able to hand it off to somebody else. That takes courage too.
Yeah, it does.
What a great
Oh,
place
big
to
time.
end,
Boy, do I know that.
Great place to stop right there. Cantor, thank you again so much. And you're welcome to stick around for any future sessions. And
I may come in and out. I've been kind of teaching